So that single voting day that could shape Nigeria's political history and development trajectory for some time to come. It is, of course, a moment in February 2023, just over 100 days away, when tens of millions of Nigerians will go to the polls to elect a new president. There are 18 political parties in the running, and 4 of them are seen as the front runners. But there is a second set of parties that's said to be snapping at the heels of those who are establishing the pace of the race. And among them is the African Democratic Congress, or ADC. They want to break to the front by picking up the votes of those who don't like any of the so-called favored contestants or the direction they've taken this country in the past, and they're convinced they can do so once the public at large get to know their plans and intentions for this country.
Nigerians want to know how we intend to partly fund primary education. With regards to the Nigeria situation, it is all interrelated. Annually, our country, with all its natural resources and God-given arable land, spends $5.2 billion on the importation of agricultural produce, with about $1.5 billion spent on just dairy products. We believe that the over-dependence on these imports do not just destroy the efforts from local farmers, but also crashes the value of the naira, as we are constantly sourcing for the dollar. Dumebi and I will put a halt to this and use the amount to revamp 1. Our agricultural hubs, 2. Our river basins. This will renew the confidence of our farmers by not just supporting them with mechanized farming, by reactivating the Nigerian Center for Agricultural Mechanization, NCAM, and the Agricultural and Rural Management Training Institute, AMTI, both of them almost moribund. This reawakening will also go as far as reorganizing most of the research institutes to be realigned with the Nigerian universities.
Well, that's what you might call a teaser trailer there. Well, to help us get to know their manifesto for 2023, I'm joined now in the studio by the vice presidential candidate of the African Democratic Congress, or ADC, Ahmed Buhari, the man you saw in that video. Good to see you, Ahmed. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Charles. Good to be here.
So tell us about the signature issues that will define that ADC manifesto.
Thanks for having me. First of all, we believe that for this country to succeed, there has got to be a renewed patriotism. And when you talk about patriotism, you're worried, you're asking yourself, how can we make the Nigerian people believe in the Nigerian space? Most of the people around the country do not believe that there's a country. They do not even want to be part of the country. That is why you go to the airports every day, or you hear people around Mali, Libya, dying in the desert because they all want to leave. And so the question here is, where do we drag all of this to find out what is the root cause? Because everybody has come up with a manifesto, people come up with agendas, oh, this is what we want to do, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to move from this economy to this kind of economy, or we're going to transform all of this in seconds. And it doesn't happen like that, because fundamentally, we've got a space that we call the Nigerian civil service. Just the way we have the 3 arms of government, we have the Nigerian civil service, and then we have the Nigerian people. But at all times, no matter who you put there in the 3 arms of government, talking about the politicians, they come there for about 4 to 8 years, they leave, and you find out that no matter how good they were before they got into office, they failed at execution, because every policy document, every project they want executed has got to go through the civil service. But the civil servants are there, they are disenchanted, they are disconnected, they're not feeling the space, and that is why for every second, every opportunity they get, they just want to grab something, because the country hasn't proven to them that they're there for them. So you go to the civil service today, and you go to the ministry, and you see posters of people, they need 200,000 naira for his medical aid, they need 500,000 for his medical aid. You go back there in a month, obituary, they're all gone. The truth of the matter is, for civil servants who even came to Abuja, for example, have to get in a job, they probably got a house in Nyanya, and they're excited about themselves, they could get a 1-bedroom apartment, but they get married and they move to Angwebiri, further down into the bush, because the money that they're receiving cannot give them the kind of life they have to live.
So you talked about, in some of your notes earlier, about a fundamental civil service reform, moving from a salaried system to a welfare system.
To a welfare incentive
I'm not
system.
entirely sure I understand what you're talking about.
What I'm talking about is, I'll give you an example. So right now you hear civil servants protesting on the road. We want 30% increment, want 40% increment. They do that for about 6 to 7 months. There is strike, nothing is happening, the country's on the standstill, and then what you know next is, oh, okay, finally we're going to give you 30%. But the market woman selling Gary in the market has moved her mudu of Gary from 100 naira to 130 naira. So they go back with 130 naira to go to the market, to 100 naira to go to the market, and it's 130 naira. So it's like you took a 1 step forward and 2 steps backward. But for those people in the society that didn't even have any increment, are now faced with double inflation. What are we talking about? The day you get into the civil service structure, let it be that your housing is taken care of. Let it be that you pay for your housing through the 35 years of service, or the age of 60, whichever comes first. These sorts of
so
one
a kind
of the
of
biggest
mortgage
concerns.
system,
exactly, rent
where
to own.
they rent their places, they pay, and
You rent to own and something like that. And then
but they pay according to their ability to pay.
Exactly.
Right.
And then the second thing that you worry about for a human being is, oh, what about the schools for my children? What stops us from protecting the child of a civil servant in government-owned schools, so that in such a way that when the soldier in Sambisa Forest is out there in Sambisa Forest and he calls his wife and his wife tells him, oh, our son has been out of school for 5 weeks, I mean, he starts to think, I'm here trying to fight for the country, risking my life, and my child has been sent out of school.
Right, but so you're talking about a welfare system.
I'm talking about a welfare system.
Yeah, but how is that going to work?
How is it going to work?
Yeah.
It's going to work because this is the only thing that you can actually provide for the
No, I understand that, but it's going to cost money.
It's going to cost money, and that is why when we look at everything, we say to ourselves, okay, fine, what is really causing this spike in the naira dollar difference and all of that? And why is it that if you look at it from every angle, you realize that Nigeria is actually, the foreign reserve is actually depleting by the day because we're currently sourcing for the dollar, which is why we're thinking of moving this whole fuel subsidy thing from fuel subsidy to how about we subsidize homegrown agricultural produce, so that whatever it is we're subsidizing, whether it's going to be machinery, whether it's going to be manpower, whether it's going to be the food, it is locally grown, and we're using the naira to source for it. $5.2 billion is the amount of money we are currently spending on the importation of agricultural produce in a country with this amount of land. As I speak with you right now, out of that 5.2 billion, $1.5 billion of that money is what we're using for only dairy products in a country with about 6 million cattle. And our cattle can't even be exported because we do not even meet with the international standard for exportation of livestock. What we're saying is, if we can take a chill pill and look at all of this and say, how can we make all of this happen locally, so that by the time we realize that we're spending about 4 trillion naira, that is the amount of money that was approved for subsidy for the year of 2022. If we can spend 4 trillion naira and divert all of that money to our local produce, let it be that Nigerians are well fed before we start talking about anything with regards to giving $1 to foreign companies just because of oil. And as I speak with you, if all of these monies are back home, I assure you, if Nigerians are belly full, we'll be able to work, we'll be able to think, and we'll be able to provide what we need to provide for ourselves before worrying about anything else. Yeah,
but how are you then going to provide for the shortfall in fuel that you're going to need in order to run the engine of the country?
As I speak with you right now, there are thousands of modular refineries in the south that all we need to do is to work with these people. Someone was asking me recently, he said, oh, there's so much insecurity in those areas, people are fighting and killing themselves, how do you expect all of this to work? And in all honesty, the only way it can work is for us to partner with the people there. There are things happening in Zamfara. As I speak with you, there is a lot of mining going on, and people are asking, how come all of this is going on without us actually finding a way to resolve it? It is because the government has distanced themselves from the people and thinking we can resolve all of this ourselves. This has to be a sort of collaboration with the Nigerian people, with the aggrieved, and ensure that we save every single naira that is being spilled.
Okay, let me try and rattle through a lot of things fairly quickly so we can get to everything. You said in that mini manifesto video, if you like, that you would bring people from communities where there's sort of conflicts, like herdsmen, landowners, farmers, etc., together to build a business relationship amongst themselves. Break it down for us. How's it going to work?
I'll tell you one thing, Charles. The only thing that makes the National Assembly member from Maiduguri call the one from Onitsha in the morning to say, my brother, how are you? Is because they have money they're sharing. When you let the people understand how they can keep all of this money with themselves, how they can let the Fulani man understand that moving with your cattle from point A to point B, trampling through people's farms, causing all of the mayhem that you cause and all the fight that ensues from all of that. We can actually keep you in ranches. We can actually keep you in allowable grazing areas where you can actually enjoy the full benefits of the entire value chain. Whether it's going to be the milk from
But they've been told about ranches before. I mean, why is it that you think you're the one who's going to be able to convince them when other people haven't?
Because nobody has told them how much money is involved. I'm just telling you how much money we spend just importing their product. You think if we drop $1.5 million today and tell the farmers in Nigeria and the herders in Nigeria that this can be yours, that they would fight? They wouldn't fight. I'll tell you a quick story. I was with Benga Daniels a few years ago, and he was telling me about this chaos they had in the southwest between two top
Yoruba, the former governor.
The former governor of Ogun State, and between the two Yoruba leaders, and he left them in the room for about 3 hours. They didn't want to talk to themselves. They were all frowning. They were all aggrieved. And he came back and said, look, we're going to be here for 3 hours, 3 days, or 3 months. I don't care. You're not going to leave this room until you start talking. Meanwhile, if you finish talking, let's share this money. And everybody started laughing. The truth of the matter is, when people are not hungry, when things are working right, people are not as angry. Like the popular saying goes that says, and a hungry man is an angry man. It is true. Most of these people are angry because they are hungry. Most of the effort that they're putting into whatever venture they're putting into, they're not getting the reciprocatory benefits for it, which is why somebody needs to step in to make them see in clear terms what each and every action you make will give to you.
Presumably that will end the farmer-herder clashes,
to a large extent, because at the end of the day, for that southeastern man that believes that this is a problem, he starts to see the benefits that if I can lease my land to the Fulani man, I can make this much money. And the Fulani man can understand that if I go through peace and have my cattle in one place, they're just not going to just fatten up in the shortest possible time, but they're going to go through the best medical processes that can even help me export my produce for the first time in my life. They're going to start understanding that, look, the feeds that you look for can actually be supplied to you and you pay for that. I know that there's this reluctance in paying, which is why the Fulani radio we talked about some years ago, this present administration talked about, is needed. These are people that are nomads by nature. They do not stay in one place. We need to find a way to communicate with them, and the communication we're going to be giving them is what can help them improve their financial status, and by so doing try to educate them so that they can understand what the world and where the world is right now.
You talked about education. You talked about how you were going to fund education at different levels. Tell us about that.
So again, we're talking about so much money here. We're looking at about $50 billion that can be realized from all of this. What am I saying? Organization. All of the things I'm talking about is already out there. We just need to organize ourselves. I spoke about AMTI, I spoke about ENCA. They are all organizations that are there, almost moribund, but people still collect salaries every day, but you've never heard of them. We had DFRI, Directorate for Food and Rural Infrastructure. What happens to all of those things? Even the farmers can't get their produce even to the roadside for people to buy them. Nobody's talking about all of these things. So what we're saying is all of these monies will be diverted. Part of them going to be diverted into the cotton industry. Nigeria was known for cotton. One of the real reasons why the Western world was in northern Nigeria was for cotton. In my hometown, Kwantagora in Niger State, that was the only thing we used to do. Today, nothing is happening. We're going to revive the cotton industry. We're going to make sure it works. And that is where we're going to have the right textile industries that are going to clothe our children. That is where we're going to have the money for the food that we're going to help feed the children in school. Because as we are right now in the country, most of our people are disconnected with believing in the system, which is why an incentive mechanism has got to be put in place to get the attention of our people, only because we want to move to a direction that will benefit all of us. Right,
and there's a bill you plan to introduce to the National Assembly if your party wins. It's called the Patriot Act.
Absolutely.
What is that about?
So the Patriot Act simply says that for a politician or a government official or somebody who works for government or a beneficiary of government contracts, if you cannot provide those things that you have signed to provide for the people, then you cannot enjoy the privileges. In other words, if I am the Minister of, say, power, for example, I cannot be seen running a generator in my house if there's no power in my streets, because if I do that, I will be losing my job. In other words, Mr. Kamoru, who is downside the road, who probably is a vulcanizer, he sees me running my generator, he's raising an alarm because you haven't provided that. How come you're benefiting from it? What about the guy who is the Minister of Health? How dare he travels out of the country, or the President travels out of the country when you have signed a Patriot Act? And this Patriot Act can only work if the Nigerian people are going to work with us to the National Assembly, letting the National Assembly know that this is the only way we can hold them accountable. Because as I speak with you right now, most of these people are not providing those things that they have signed to provide. I'm telling you, if you say, oh, Mr. James, you're going to come become the Minister of Education. He calls his children who are schooling in Germany, oh, you all have to come back because I'm going to become a minister. And the kids are going to be reluctant. But at the end of the day, he tells them, I'm going to make it work because I know this is going to directly affect you. So Nigeria as it stands, there's no patriotism. Nobody cares about the next man. Only cares about himself and his immediate family. Yeah. But now if you're worried about how your immediate family is going to live better, by extension it's going to help the larger society.
Yeah, but I understand the theory of what you're saying.
Right.
But the practice of it, I mean, you can expect probably a lot of lawsuits and things if you introduce something like that, because people are going to say to you, where are the hospitals? Where are the educational institutions? Why do I have to be subjected to this when you haven't provided quality institutions?
As a matter of fact, as I speak with you right now, Charles, the only reason why those things are not working is because the civil servants who are supposed to checkmate the inadequacies, the lapses, are failing to do so. I'll give you an example. We've had people like Obasanjo, like Erdogan, like Goodluck Jonathan, bringing some of the greatest minds into the country as ministers, and they push them into these ministries because the whole idea was they're going to sanitize the place and they're going to make it work. But what happened at the end of the day? They all failed woefully. At some point, the civil servants will just sit down and say, you met me here, you're going to leave me here. You're here for 4 or 8 years at max. I'm going to be here for 35 years maybe. And so at some point, the politician goes to the civil servant and say, what do you want me to do? I say, welcome. Now let's talk. Which is why we're not moving forward. But I'm assuring you, by the time everybody knows that this is going to affect my children, because my children will be compelled to use government schools, I'm going to be compelled to use national hospitals. They have to work. When you are sent to that place to go and look at it, you're going to ensure that it's working right. When there's a bid and somebody bids, say for example, 20% markup on the contract, because if you go to the ministries now, you put a 20% markup, they laugh at you and say, are you crazy? 20%? Well, make it 200%, because at the end of the day, they're going to share. But right now, if they know that this welfare structure we're bringing on board is going to actually benefit the larger percentage of them, I assure you, that small percentage that has been depriving the rest of them from a better life would ensure that they blow the whistle should any of their bosses be going astray.
Right. Okay, well, it's all nice and good, and you're a pretty articulate person. You've tried to put it in some perspective for us, but the bottom line is, as I'm sure you know, winning an election. Where do you see your place in the pantheon of Nigerian political parties as the elections draw near? Where do you fit in the ADC?
No doubt, Nigerians are drawn to the big four as it is, but we're not going to shy away from the fact that the big four are also not so sure about themselves right now. For the first time, the election doesn't seem to be as clear as it used to be before, which is why all of them...
Yeah, but the lack of clarity is between those four parties. It doesn't appear to extend beyond that. I mean, I'm not prejudicing what potentially could happen, but I'm saying at the moment it doesn't appear to extend beyond
at the moment. So I'm a politician, and I'm in a constant struggle to see that all the things that I want to see happen. And one thing that we have to always focus on when we talk about all of these things is the fact that all of the people that we talk about, all of the things that we've been listening to, I assure you, Nigerians are watching, they're going to be like, well, how come we've not heard this before? And that's the truth. And the truth remains that we are carried away by the hula baloos, and we just move with the crowd. Some people don't even want to ask the questions. People say things and they don't ask them the how. How do you intend to achieve this? How is it going to be achieved? How is it going to be done? Which is why we're different. And all we are asking for is Nigerians should just listen and build that perspective within themselves and ask these people that you've always been saying, oh, they're your choices. They've all had an opportunity to run one space or the other within the Nigerian context. How magnificent were they? That gives you the comfort that indeed they are going to give you the country that you desire.
Wouldn't you be better off? I mean, beyond the analysis you're giving of the other people, many of whom have been governors, 2 times they've held the executive office. So to that extent, you can criticize them about whether they did brilliantly well or reasonably well or not. But they've had that experience, whereas you haven't, nor has your candidate. Might you not be better off if you went into an alliance with someone, like a coalition? Because there are reports, the Labour Party has come out to say that they're talking with quite a lot of parties. I don't know if the ADC is one of them, but they're talking about building a stronger coalition that would make it a little more probable that there will be victories that will emerge across the country for that coalition. Is that something that you're considering?
So in politics, the first priority is to win the election. And there are all the things that you have to look at. Should you lose the election, should it not look like it's in your favor? Because at the end of the day, you don't vote for yourself alone. There are a lot of people, millions of Nigerians would have to make that decision. And then for a smart politician, you should be able to read the writings on the walls, which is why I keep telling people.
So what does the writing say to you? What's the writing on the wall?
As it stands right now, I know we have people across the country, we have structures across the country who still are fired up and believing in what we're doing. And again, one other thing that is important is the timing. Sometimes, like the graph is, it goes up and sometimes it comes down. Sometimes it's down and then it goes up. One thing the ADC is fixated with is the fact that we're not going to relent. We're going to go to the polls and we're going to give Nigerians a different feel of what indeed.
So you weren't going to coalition or alliance with anyone else? You're basically discounting that possibility. It hasn't been a discourse at all on the table. But I keep telling politicians one thing. Politics is about alliances, it's about realliances, it's about considerations and things like that. Because at the end of the day, all we're looking for is a better country. And the fact that you sit down and believe that no one else can do it but you, it's a bit of a problem, which is why I believe that we're always open for such discussions, even though we've never thought about it. It's never been a concern for us. It's about, working the talk. But practically speaking, and not trying to sort of in any way reduce your possibility or your chances, just being realistic.
Right.
Do you think you'll be able to get anything more than just a token number of votes, even if you have some very good ideas in your manifesto? I mean, somebody said that it's already game over before you've started for a lot of the parties, or are you just getting started?
I think it's a process. And the whole idea of Nigerians believing that some of these exercises should yield results like this now is something we should dissociate ourselves from. We should look at the bigger picture. We should look at the long haul. Politics is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And for some of those people we're contending with, they've been in the media space for 40, 50 years. Their names are household names. And just because we're in the space and a lot of people feel, oh, these guys are new, can they be trusted? Have they done something that we would fall back on and say, these are the people that we want to work with? And for those reasons, discounters, I think it would be unfair. I think it's always interesting or important for them to know that all of those people that they do support actually started from nowhere, and their best years were when they were younger. You,
of course, have been around the block a couple of times now. You were a presidential candidate in 2019, and now you're a vice presidential candidate. What is it that inspires you into politics?
I know, I think we've had this talk on different stations, and I keep telling people that for many people who think I'm just a privileged northern kid, it isn't so. I've been through a lot. I was raised by a single mother. I know what it is to go home hungry or go to bed hungry. I know what it is not to be sure of what the next phase of your life is going to look like. I know what it means when you really truly think this is the end for you. And if I've gotten this far, it simply just means that anybody can achieve the things that I've achieved. You just need to believe in yourself. I know that we're living in a system where the system dictates to you what you should do, what level of growth you should achieve, and I've decided not to allow any of that to control me. I've decided to stand my ground. Whenever I visualize, I try to achieve.
So you're doing what you're doing in defiance of the odds that you think are against you.
But that's part of it, and that's the significance of what exactly I'm doing. And I've also allowed a lot of Nigerians to understand that I think I have so much to offer, and I would rather, give that to my country than just sit within my business space and allow that to remain there. I know one of the first times I declared I was going to run, I'm an IT expert, I'm a geologist by training. One of the things that made me decide I was going to run was when some certain government policies were not in favor of the new technological trends that were happening in Nigeria, especially when I was living in Lagos. And I said, you know what, we're going to challenge this people. We're going to go in there, we're going to tell them how it's supposed to be done. But you see, the good thing about this, Charles, is the fact that some of the things that I've talked about and the things that I want to see happen, I may not necessarily be the one to effect these changes. As long as I'm going through this process, and this process is going to birth that better country that would benefit the next generation or generations to come, so be it.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much indeed. I think you're a young man with a very bright political future.
Thank you.
And I think you should stick with it. Ahmed Buhari is the vice presidential candidate of the African Democratic Congress, or ADC. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Charles.